So you want to know the difference between traditional and indie publishing. As a best-selling author who is a hybrid author, both traditionally and indie published, I have got some answers for you. So let's take a breakdown of these two different types of publishing and see which is going to be the right fit for you and for your book. Traditional publishing is where you are actually going to write your manuscript and then you are going to go and get an agent. Now you can query some houses directly, but most of the big houses, the important houses, the only ones worth getting into these days are actually going to require you to have that middleman. So you have to get an agent. An agent is someone who kind of knows the industry pretty dang well and knows what's going to be in market in the next couple of seasons. And so they are going to read through your book. They're going to make you edit it. They're going to make you refine it. They're going to make you make sure that everything is good for them to then present it on your behalf to a publishing house. You have to have an agent to get into these big publishing houses. They'll then take your manuscript, they'll go to their contact inside of that publishing house, and they will say, hey, I've got this novel, are you interested in this? They'll then shop it around to a couple of different companies, and hopefully they'll get you a deal. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. If they hit all of their people and they can't get you a deal, tough cookies, kid, you are done. They will not move forward with your book. So then after that, you have to write a new book and try again. Now, with this, you have the ability to go to smaller and middle-sized publishers, and you do not need a middleman. You don't need an agent. So you can go directly to them and query them and say, is this something you would like? Now, with traditional publishing, when you get a deal with a big or a small house, you are required to sign a contract. Usually, these are 5-year deals. So for 5 years, your book is with them. They own it. They get to do whatever they want to it. They can make you change whatever you want. They're in charge of the cover. They're in charge of the blurb. They're in charge of everything, including your marketing. Now, most companies will make you do the majority of the marketing yourself. I have friends who are in the biggest houses in the industry, and they still have to do almost all of the marketing by themselves. So if you're worried about the marketing, it doesn't matter. You have to learn and you have to do it. So you should be studying business and studying the market while you're writing and while you're waiting to query. This needs to be a priority for you because no matter what case you take, whether you are traditional or indie published, you're going to have to do the most of the marketing all by yourself. Now, with this, you are signed on for usually 5 years, and that's for every single book. So if you are pitching a series and they actually want to buy your series, it's 5 years for every book that you're signing. So 5 years for the first book, 5 years after the third book comes out. It's going to be a while. So if you like them, great, you can sign with them and you are good and they will work with you for 5 years. Typically in the traditional publishing world, they will help you market your book up until launch and a little bit after that, but then for the rest of the years, like your 2, 3, 4, 5, you're kind of on your own for selling your books unless you have subsequent books coming out. With this, you are going to give away all of your rights. So they're in charge of everything. You don't get to make any decisions. Sometimes they'll give you a little bit of a say, but usually not so much. You just have to go with whatever they tell you to do and whatever they choose to do for your book. And then you are giving away the majority of your royalties. In a traditional publishing setting, you typically get about 10 to 20% of your royalties. 30 is on the high end, but I've never heard of it really going over 30. 30 is a generous part of royalties to be giving an author. So you have to understand they're doing the work, so they're making the majority of the money. They're going to be editing your book, they're going to be formatting your book, they're going to be doing the cover, they're going to be doing the blurb, they're going to be putting it up online to market, they're going to be printing copies, all those things. So they get a ton of the money because they have to pay the company, the editor, the people working with you, the designers, like all those people need to get paid too. So you have a very small portion of your royalties coming to you in a traditional publishing setting. And then after 5 years, you can choose to continue your contract with them, or you can get rights back to your book. But if you have more than one book in a series, it is actually going to be 5 years after the last one for the last book. So you could potentially get the rights back to book 1 2 years, 3 years, before you get back the rights to the other books. It all depends on the publishing schedule of when it comes out. Now, traditional publishing usually takes a very long time to happen. So you will have to write your book, edit it to the best of your ability, and then go and get an agent. This can take anywhere from a few weeks, if you're incredibly lucky, to usually multiple months or even a couple of years. It is a very long process. Then once they have your book, they're going to go through it and they're going to make you make changes and make it ready to go to market. At that point, it could then take another year or less or more to again get your book to a publishing house. And then at that point, it could take another year to 2 years to get the book out on market because traditional publishing is incredibly slow. And so it's going to take a very long time to get your book out there if you are going the traditional publishing route. You just have to be prepared for that and be working on your next project. So let's take a look at indie. Indie is really cool because it is self-publishing. And these days we don't have the stigma that we used to because we have a lot of resources to make them level up their game inside of the indie world and put out professionally published books. In fact, the majority of the people I know are indie published and they are making 6 and 7 figures a year off of their books, rivaling and way surpassing a lot of what people make in the traditional world. So it really just depends on what you want for your book and how much control you want and how much you're willing to do. Now, as an indie author, you do have to get your own editor. So you have to hire somebody to edit your book. You have to have a professional. For the love of all things good, it can't be your mother. It can't be your best friend. It can't be someone who reads a lot. It can't be a reader. It has to be someone who is professionally trained. Even your best friend who is an English teacher in a high school that's local to you is not qualified to edit your book. Believe me, I've learned this the hard way. I've gone through a lot of editors, and even when I've had multiple editors on my book, things can still fall through the cracks just like they can in traditional publishing. You guys have seen it. You've seen the errors in books. It's okay. But you have to have a professional because you're going to miss a lot. I'm a teacher. I miss a lot in my own books. And I even miss stuff when I'm working with other people as well, which is why I'm a developmental editor. I help with storylines and plot holes. I don't do the whole grammar thing because you learn a lot as a writer. So you have to hire an editor, and then you have to hire a formatter, and you have to hire a cover designer. So this is a little bit of money that you're investing into it, but it's not terrible, especially compared to some of those predatory companies. We've talked about vanity presses. Make sure you are checking out those videos all about not working with vanity presses and why you should not. But you want to make sure that you're investing into a quality cover designer because cover is what sells your book. You want to make sure you're investing into a quality editor. And then, of course, you want to make sure that you're investing into someone who is going to format your book correctly in ebook, paperback, and or hardcover formats as well. Now, you will have to or potentially could have to buy an ISBN depending on what you want to do with your book. Some of the printing companies do allow you to use their ISBNs, but you can't put them anywhere else. So typically, you're going to want to grab your own ISBN so that you can have it in multiple places. And of course, you need to learn about the publishing companies, which are the same ones the big houses use. So you have the ability to get into libraries, schools, bookstores. You have the ability to be on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble, on iBooks, on Kobo, on all those buying platforms. Everywhere traditional books are published, you as an indie can get into as well and become a bestseller and hit bestseller lists if you are marketing correctly. So as an indie author, you do have to write your book. Just like anyone else, you're going to have beta readers to help you with plot hole issues. You're going to have to self-edit. You're going to have some friends look over it, but then you're also going to have to hire a professional editor, which you don't have to do if you're going into traditional publishing because your publisher pays for that out of the royalties that they take away from you. So then at that point, you are going to be able to write as quickly or as slowly as you would like, get your own work done on your own timetable, and put your book out as quickly as you want. This can take anywhere from a couple of weeks to a couple of months. You don't have to wait years and years and years for this to happen. In fact, I am such a fast writer that I can write a full-length novel in 9.5 days. I can send it to my editor, and if her schedule works really well, I can have it back within a week. And then I can put the cover on, I can format it, and I'm good to go. I can have a book start to finish, fully written, and out in the world for purchase within like 2 weeks. It's an amazingly quick turnaround. And if you're a fast writer, you're going to make more money this way because you can put out more books and you can market better. Now, as an indie publisher, you have the ability to make all of your own choices, which means you can take part in any contest, any giveaways, any functions. You can go to any book signing. You can go to any event. You can make all the decisions because you own all of your rights and you keep all of your royalties, which, by the way, is up to 70%. So just think about that. Traditional publishing is maybe up to 30%. Indie publishing is 30 to 70%, depending on what you price your book at, and you can make a lot of money that way. So really, it just comes down to which way is going to work best for you. You're going to have to market either way, so you have to learn the industry, you have to understand what you're doing, you have to know how to take those next steps. So that means you do have to study. University of YouTube is all I'm saying. And then you need to actually be able to take those steps. So you can hire some really great people to work with you, or you can give away your rights and have other people do it for you and make your own decisions. And then just see what works best for you. Some people like to go the traditional route. Some people like to go the indie route. I personally make way more money in the indie world, and I do a lot better. My market my marketing works a lot better in the indie world. People buy a lot more books. People are very, very hyper involved in my book world. So it really just depends on what you want to do and what you feel comfortable doing. Some people are nervous to do it on their own and they go traditional. Some people want the fame that comes with being a traditionally published author, but a lot of my friends in the indie world have that as well. So what do you want to do? What is important to you and what do you want to learn? You're going to have to learn in either case. It really just depends on what you want to do. Is there a house you want to work with? Okay, cool. Get your agent, get into that house. Do you want to form your own house? Do you want to work with a co-op that functions like a traditional publisher, but actually is self-published on the inside, so you keep all your royalties and y'all just work together and make it look like a house? There's so many different avenues that you can take inside of the publishing world. You just have to know what you have available to you. Now, I'm going to be linking some resources down below, so make sure you are checking those out. And if you've got questions about traditional versus indie publishing, feel free to hit me up. I am very, very open about my journey. I have taken the last couple of years, I've been a published author for 3 years now, and before that, I turned down a bunch of contracts with really big name houses because I didn't like the money, or I didn't like the terms, or I didn't like what they were offering me, and I jumped into the world of indie publishing first. And I do really, really well there, and you can as well. But it really comes down to what works best for you and what works best for your book. Now, if you do have a book that is not written to market, then you should probably go indie, because a lot of the traditional publishers don't know how to market off-market things, and that could be a little bit hard. It could be a very hard sell. Now, we are going to be answering more questions. We've got some really great ones coming in about how many books you should write before you get an agent, how to get an agent, how to query, how to self-publish, how to go through the publishing route in the traditional world. So we're going to be answering all of those. Hit the subscribe and notification bell, because this is going to really help you to decide what is the best path to take inside of your author journey. Everybody's different. There is no right or wrong way, aside from not going with predatory companies like vanity presses. And you can really make up your own mind, and you can try different things. Pro tip here though, if you start out as an indie and you take your book and you self-publish it, there is no traditional company that will take that book from you, period, because they don't have control over it at that point. And if you didn't sell exceptionally well, they're not going to want it because it's proven to not work in the market. So if you want a traditional publishing contract, write your book, get an agent, get into a publishing house. Got to do it that way. Do not put it out first. If you want to make money right off the bat, if you want to learn this industry, if you really want to hit the ground running, indie might be for you, and then you can work on a traditional book later on if that's something that you want. Hybrid life is awesome, indie life is awesome, and traditionally published life is awesome. It really just depends on what's going to be the best for you. I'm very happy in my hybrid state, so I like being both traditionally and indie published because I have insight to all sorts of fabulous things, and I know what works and what doesn't inside of the industry, and I can kind of pivot and change and do things, and it's really very, very interesting place to be, to have both a traditionally published and indie published books. So I will give you all the details. I am holding nothing back. Feel free to ask me any questions. The only thing I might not be able to answer is something super specific to one of my publishing houses if it's in my contract that I can't talk about it, but basically everything is on the table. So feel free to ask your questions. I'm bestselling author K.M. Robinson, here to help you on your author journey. So hit me up here in the comments and let me know, what didn't you know about traditional versus indie publishing? And drop your questions down below. I'll see you over on TikTok for more, and feel free to drop your questions over there.